In his latest piece, Matt Taibbi outlines how the media has changed over the past decade, shifting from intensely covering American intelligence and putting pressure on big actors like CIA Chief John Brennan to primarily focusing on Trump and Russian meddling, as well as calling for stronger oversight and censorship of free speech.
So journalist and author Matt Taibbi joins us now to discuss. Matt, what's the overall trend that you're pointing to here, especially now, post-Russiagate and everything?
Yeah, again, not that long ago, I would say even 5 or 6 years ago, the intelligence agencies were under fairly intense scrutiny by the press around the world. There was a lot of pressure put on the intel agencies after revelations like Snowden's whistleblowing, the revelation of the secret surveillance program that the NSA had, torture, open-ended prison sentences, and, the WikiLeaks revelation, the Afghan war logs, the Guantanamo Bay logs. And suddenly, in the age of Trump, they've successfully sort of turned public opinion completely around. And the services are now seen as being a sort of force against Trump. And they've managed to steer public opinion in the direction of, the public should be on the side of the FBI, CIA, and NSA. And I think that's a significant development.
And you see that reflected in the views of base Democrats in terms of how they feel about the FBI and the CIA. Something we've tracked here and that you track very effectively in this piece is you keep seeing these pieces pop up in mainstream outlets of like, we got to be worried about podcasts, right? Started with Parler, and then it's podcast, and then it's Substack is the threat. I mean, there's almost no platform that hasn't come under this type of scrutiny. Of course, listening in on Clubhouse conversations to see if they can find something they can pull out to paint the whole project as nefarious. What is going on here? I mean, what is behind this new trend in journalism?
This is, to me, a repeat of what happened after 9/11 when there was intense propaganda right after the World Trade Centers collapsed, where they said, any country that's not under our direct control, any place that could potentially be a safe haven is unsafe, and that we have to invade those places and pacify them and put them under our control. Sort of a parallel situation is now developing with digital space, where they're saying any place where extremists can, quote, talk amongst themselves. That's a phrase that I've encountered a lot coming from ex-intelligence people who are now, all talking heads on cable. Those places are dangerous. So we need to have all of those places under the control of companies that can censor them on demand. And that's what, sort of formats like Clubhouse or podcasts, things that are not easily regulated by algorithmic searches, those are portrayed as dangerous. And the public has backed this overwhelmingly. And that's what's amazing.
Yeah, and let's go into the policy implications. This is something I covered here on the show, which is when you create a hagiography around people like Susan Hennessy, for example, and she becomes this Russiagate celebrity. She's now running the National Security Division at the DOJ, where she will have subpoena power. She'll be presenting warrants before FISA courts and all of that. And she also, when she wasn't talking about Russiagate, was going after Edward Snowden and justifying FISA warrantless surveillance. That's the real policy consequence of all of this.
Absolutely. And again, incredibly, just a couple of weeks ago, we had a declassification of a Foreign Intelligence Service Court ruling that showed once again, for the fourth time in my counting, that the FBI has been caught repeatedly violating the very minimal safeguards that exist to prevent the intel agencies from abusing FISA surveillance powers to spy on, for instance, domestic actors, people who are not connected to foreign intelligence investigations. They've been busted over and over and over again, and the public is not concerned about that because they perceive FISA as a tool that can be used to crack down on extremists and insurrectionists, or whatever the term du jour is. And so all of these abuses that were a major concern of liberals, I think, right up until the end of the Obama era, are now perceived as being something that, are used against the Trumpists only, and that therefore they're good things. And that's incredibly dangerous.
Matt, what do you say to the pushback here of, look, as journalists, what we're trying to do is combat violent, dangerous white supremacists and other extremists who pose a threat, both internally in your community, but also at a broader national level. What do you say to that pushback?
Certainly, it's a legitimate story to go after and investigate those kinds of groups. There's no question that they're an incredible danger. I think this is something that liberals were saying, even dating back to the earliest days after 9/11, that the most dangerous terrorist threat in America was probably domestic, sort of white supremacists, maybe, certainly nationalist extremists. However, the troubling aspect for me is that you see all these news agencies launching these investigations into the behaviors of people in various corners of the internet, but they're also suspending their interest in going after the much, much more dangerous activities of the intelligence agencies, who are doing things like filing tens of thousands of national security letters where people are being surveilled without their knowledge, where the private telecom companies are giving away information, where people's medical information is being given to the authorities. All that stuff people no longer care about because they're focused on this other thing, which has been hyped as the threat in modern America. And I think it's not commensurate to what the actual problem is.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Thanks for joining us, man. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
See you, Matt.
Crystal Sagar, take care.
More Rising for you after this.